Vicki and I have been asked to provide a few suggestions for selective mutism strategies for parents. Vicki, as a speech-language pathologist, this comes up for you.
It does.
Quite a bit.
It
Can you
does.
take a moment and just explain what selective mutism is?
So selective mutism is when a child can speak. They have the ability to speak in some circumstances, but for whatever reason, they are not speaking in other circumstances or with certain people.
It can be very focal, right? Like the child might speak very freely and openly at home and with family, but not at all at school.
And I had one student that he would be talking with his mother on a walk, and even as they approached the school to walk past the school, he would stop talking and then speak again past the school. So it can be it's a very selective thing. Now, that being said, we don't want to oversimplify it though.
Right, meaning it's not just that this child is choosing not to speak or that they are being defiant or oppositional about it. My experience with kids who have selective mutism is that they are not being defiant. It's not an oppositional thing. In fact, as a psychologist, now I get to kick in with my experience, okay? It really is more of an anxiety-based disorder. It's a problem that originates from psychology more than it does from language development. Would you agree with that, Vicki?
I would, yes, I definitely would.
So like you said, let's not oversimplify it and say that it's just choice. There is an element of choice.
Right.
Okay, we're going to acknowledge that, and that affects how we handle it and how we treat it. But it's not just that. There are many factors involved, including psychological and social and emotional factors that contribute. And it's not as easy as just saying, well, just talk.
Right.
So Vicki, let's get into some do's and don'ts.
Okay.
Now, these are
good.
particularly for you as parents, but you might be a professional or a teacher or a SLP working with kids that these can be helpful for as well. So where can we start, Vicki?
Well, one of the first things you want to do is allow for some warm-up time. Give the child a little bit of time to just warm up to the idea of speaking in their situation, their setting.
Or even the environment that they're in. You'll notice this with typical children as well. When they come into a new environment, at first it's kind of like they're unsure
Looking
or
all
uncertain. There's a higher level of vigilance. Well, this is exaggerated with kids who have selective mutism. And because of the anxiety issues, they're going to need a little more warm-up time even than typical children would.
Definitely.
So allow for that. Vicki, let's cover some of the don'ts too.
Okay.
Because that can be helpful. Don't force or insist on speech.
You know, it's such an interesting thing because we're talking about strategies for parents who are dealing with children with selective mutism. Really what we're kind of talking about is strategies and accommodations you're going to make to help them learn to be comfortable to communicate in their environment.
Now, communication includes a whole lot more than speech.
Yes.
And in my experience, kids who have selective mutism continue to communicate.
Yes, definitely.
But they find ways around it. So sometimes they'll use an intermediary, for example.
I've seen some that might feel comfortable whispering to one child, one good friend, or whispering to the teacher. So there are ways, but it is not helpful to insist that they speak.
Right. And you can't force them, so get that out of your mind anyway. How would you do that? How about another do?
Okay.
Monitor your child's anxiety, and you can usually pick that up through body language.
Right. As you just get to know the child better. So this is for parents, but also maybe some classroom teachers as well. As you get to know them, you're going to be able to tell when their anxiety is rising. So you're going to want to monitor that.
You can look for some typical cues. For example, the eyes turning down, or they almost become smaller,
they get small. The
right?
shoulders
They
go
kind of
down.
hunker down, the shoulders go down. This is a protective kind of a stance that a child will take that indicates to you that the anxiety has gone up a bit. And that's a good time to notice that probably it's going to be less likely that we'll have a successful communication, at least verbally, in that moment. So monitor the anxiety and watch that body language.
That kind of brings me to one of the don'ts that I see all the time is if they do speak, don't make a huge deal out of it. One of the things that they really don't want is all the attention turned on them or on their speaking. So I've seen it before where a child does finally say something and the whole classroom's like, did you see so-and-so?
Oh, he
blah, blah,
talked.
blah. And that's going to reduce the chances of them talking again.
Yes.
Right.
No parties, no celebrations. And it's tempting to do that because you've been looking for this, and you'll have a little party inside of your own heart and mind, but keep it toned down. Honestly, this is something that kids with selective mutism fear.
Is having all that attention drawn to them and their speaking.
That's one of the reasons they're not speaking in the first place.
Now, that doesn't mean you can't process it later with them.
Right.
About, hey, did you see when you spoke and said this, here's what happened. You know, here's the consequence. You got what you were asking for, or, you know, so-and-so said, yes, I'd like to have you come over to my party, and you got to go to the party because you told them yes, or you invited them.
And along those lines, we want to help them internalize the rewards for having communicated appropriately. And so less focused on my feelings. I was so proud of you. You did such a great job. Yeah, tone that down and get back to where they're coming from. How did that feel to you when you actually had the courage to do that, when you spoke up? And draw out from them their feelings. That's going to be much more reinforcing. I've got another do.
Okay.
Stay patient, because it's going to take a while. Remember, we were talking about having some warm-up time. There's also a time period. I've watched this with so many of the selective mutism kids I've worked with where they want to say it. They're about to say it, but it takes them some time.
There's some hesitation.
And it's going to take a little longer than you are comfortable with. So notice that, and it's not as long as you fear, but it's longer than you want. Allow for the hesitation. Be patient and allow for that pause and that hesitation, because a lot of times they'll work through it and have a little success. Now, when they do, don't celebrate it.
Not too bad. Yeah, don't go. But, you know, a trick that I use as a speech language pathologist is we literally count, we maybe provide the opportunity where they can have the response, give a response. And it feels so long, but you actually count 1, 2, 3. You count all the way to 10 silently in your head before you present another prompt or another question or something. Give them so much time, because they might need that much time to muster all their courage to communicate verbally with you.
There's another psychological reason why this works, and it's called desensitization. While they're feeling that anxiety, if you jump in and rescue them right then, it actually reinforces the anxiety. If you'll allow them to feel it. Now, it's not intense, it's mild at this point. They're considering responding to your prompt. So give them some time. Now, whether they respond or not is not as important as whether you give them the time to respond. And without any pressure or expectation, you're simply pausing, and you've got a pleasant face, and you're not staring them down, okay? In fact, it's better with kids who are experiencing selective mutism, it's better to focus on a prop of some kind. So you might be playing a game, for example, and you've given them an opportunity to respond about that game. You put your focus on the prop or the game.
While you're counting your 10.
And you're counting silently, and there's no pressure. Okay? If you're looking at them or, you know, doing the Kung Fu Panda stare down, then we're making it worse. So focus on the prop, allow the time for the hesitation.
And this leads perfectly into the next don't. Say I gave them the whole 10 seconds after my prompt and they didn't respond. Do not punish them for not speaking. That's such a huge, important don't. Don't punish them for not speaking.
We're going to be fairly nonchalant about this whole thing. Part of the clue that I think is hard to catch on to with selective mutism is that it can't be about me as a parent. It can't be about, I'm so proud of you. It can't be about, I'm so disappointed in you. So we're not going to...
Or even, I'm afraid you're going to miss out on everything, so I'm going to take over.
Right, exactly. So we're going to detach the parental emotion from the response, and we're not going to reward or punish the speaking or not speaking it will simply be whatever, which leads me into the next part. And this is a part we have to be kind of careful with, because allowing for natural consequences to occur with a detachment from my own emotions puts it back into more of a choice realm for that child. Let me give you a quick example, and I've used this with several of the kids very effectively. Mom or dad takes the kids out for ice cream. Everybody gets to have whatever they order. Now, this is something you might want to work up to, because that's kind of a high anxiety situation for a lot of kids. And for others, maybe not so much, but we're going to detach the emotion from it and allow time. Would you like to order something? And then count silently to 10. And if not, then that's fine. Move on to the next child. Now, this is going to be hard, right?
Yeah.
We're not doing it as a punishment. We're simply allowing some natural consequences to happen, because here's the thing. There will be natural consequences.
Yeah.
Outside of your control. We want them to learn in a loving environment to face some of those fears and overcome some of their own internal barriers to speaking in a way that's not attached to my emotions as a parent. Is that making sense to you? This is something that can empower your child. And you know what? I've seen some kids move through this in a way that they feel confident.
Yeah.
And they are so grateful that they were able to overcome some of the hurdles that they were facing. It's a complicated issue, but I think some of these things could help. If you found this helpful, would you please share our channel, this community, with other conscious parents that you're aware of? And if you haven't checked out yet our resources at parentingpowerup.com, Vicki and I have teamed up to bring you all kinds of great helps and tips for you as a parent.
Come and join us.
Her head was down, face locked onto the phone.